Hello, hello. Check 1 2. Hello, hello, live chat. How is it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the gaming live chat that we do over here on YouTube. I'm sure everyone that's going to be in the chat right now already knows me, but for anyone that stumbles across this video, I am Benji-Sales, and I talk about video game sales a lot. I talk about the video game industry in general, but my main expertise, my main focus, the main thing that I really like to talk about is game sales. And boy, do we have some major news and major updates on both Nintendo and Xbox from the fiscal quarter reportings that just came out for both. So the way this live chat works for anybody that is jumping in right now, drop your questions in the chat over on the side. Anything you want to talk about. There's a ton of big news. I'm gonna hit the major points here really quick first, and then we'll break down, dive a little bit deeper into all this because boy, is there some big stuff to talk about. So yes, any questions you've got, drop them in the chat. Let's get rocking. So first things first, what's the biggest news, right? What's the biggest, craziest thing? It's got to be Nintendo's reporting, right? First of all, the Switch is now shipped over 52 million units, which means it has already outsold the Xbox One lifetime, which is staggering, to be over 52 million in less than 3 years. I mean, it's absolutely insane, especially whenever you think about where Nintendo was just a few short years ago with the Wii U, which was a complete catastrophe from a sales perspective. So pretty insane to see that bounce back. Pokemon shipping, over 16 million units in a month and a half. It's absurd. Whenever I saw that number, it blew me away. I knew it was going to be way over 10 million, but 16 million, that is complete and utter madness. That is one of the biggest launches for an exclusive title ever, period, for any system ever. It's one of the fastest selling exclusives of all time. So just absolutely crazy in terms of the Nintendo news. Of course, there was a whole bunch of other big takeaways from their software this year. I thought really across the board, pretty much all of the exclusives did really, really well. Whenever you look at Ring Fit being already over 2 million, I think that's a great result. Whenever you look at Luigi's Mansion 3, it was a bit less than I thought. I thought Luigi could make it to 6, but it did 5.3 million, if I'm recalling right. I think it's 5.3 million, which is still amazing. I set the bar a little bit high whenever I went for 6 million, but it's just been doing so well in the US and Europe that I thought it could get there. But I think Japan's holding it back a little bit. It just is. It's lagging pretty well in Japan, but it hasn't been the kind of success in Japan that it's been overseas. So I think Japan kind of held it back a little bit from hitting that 6 million number, but still, make no mistake, 5.3 million in just a couple months is amazing. So yeah, really across the board, Nintendo, I tweeted about this. It was one of the best quarters we've seen for any platform holder since the Wii days. There's been a couple other really good performances, for example, from Sony and the PlayStation 4. That's why I used one of. I'm not necessarily saying this is the best quarter since the Wii days for any platform holder, but it's one of, for sure. It is one of the best quarters I've seen in a long time. So incredible performances across the board there from Nintendo. All right, I think I've got some questions dropping in. So let's go ahead and jump into these. Keep dropping those questions. Let's keep breaking it down, and let's get going. What's up, Zdark? What's up, KC? What up, Fintendo? What up, Wound Up Penguin? All right, we've got Zdark here dropping the first major question. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had its largest quarterly sales ever. Yeah, how insane is that? It's crazy. 3.95 million, even higher than this launch quarter. Despite the previous 2 quarters being down year over year, do you think Mario Kart Tour, interesting question, was a big factor in those gigantic sales? Well, that's a great question. It might have had some effect. I think the bigger thing that we're seeing here, though, is that Switch hardware sales in general were massive this holiday. Enormous, right? Switch shipped over 10 million for the quarter, which is insane. So I think it's more that you're seeing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is like the game people pick up with their Switch. So I think that's why this quarter was so big for Mario Kart. It's just become the game you get with the Switch. Now, also it was bundled, so I'm sure Nintendo's probably factoring in those Black Friday bundles into this number. I would think, maybe they're not going to count the bundle, but I'm thinking that the bundle sales are probably in this. Maybe not, though, actually. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. But either way, the main thing I think that caused this huge bump for Mario Kart in general was the fact that, it's just become the game you pick up with your Switch. Other games shipped stronger this quarter than they have been. Breath of the Wild had an amazing quarter. A lot of games that are older saw some boosts. So I think it's more just that Switch hardware is so big that people are just going out and getting these evergreen first-party Nintendo games with their Switch. Exile End. Yo, Benji, good to see you back. What's up? Switch sales crazy. Yeah, they completely are. Breath of the Wild 2 is going to destroy sales. Yeah, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be an interesting one to watch, right? So it's definitely going to be huge. I'm interested to see if it matches the original Breath of the Wild, though. I think it definitely can, but you also have to remember that Breath of the Wild had insane reviews, and Breath of the Wild 2 probably will as well. But when those reviews for Breath of the Wild came out, they were just absolutely through the roof. It was the hype of the Switch launch. Definitely, I think Breath of the Wild 2's launch is going to be bigger. I don't think there's any question about that because the install base is way bigger than it was, back when Breath of the Wild launched. So in terms of launch, no question in my mind, Breath of the Wild 2 is bigger. I am going to be interested to watch, though, to see if Breath of the Wild 2 has those kind of legs that we see for the original one, because my goodness, that game just keeps selling and selling and selling and selling. So Breath of the Wild 2 very well may, do that as well. I'm not saying it's not, but that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But launch is for sure going to be bigger, for absolutely sure. Wound up, hit that like button. Let's get more people in here. Hey, I'd appreciate it. I'll always say thanks for the likes. They help the channel out a bunch. Fintendo. Hello, Benji. Animal Crossing will send off the fiscal year. How are pre-orders looking, and do you think this release will impact the female market? Good questions, Fintendo. Couple things to break down here on this one. Pre-orders, from what I'm seeing, look good. My visibility to Nintendo pre-orders specifically aren't as strong as I get visibility to certain other games. I do see some of that, but it's not quite the visibility I have to, let's say, PlayStation games, or some of that kind of stuff, just because I have a lot more contacts for that kind of thing. But I am seeing a little bit. They look strong from what I'm seeing, but always remember that Nintendo games are ones that do extraordinarily well, even outside of pre-orders. So a lot of the the hardcore PlayStation fans or the hardcore Xbox fans, they're a lot more ingrained, I think, in going out and pre-ordering stuff. Nintendo traditionally hasn't had as big of an attachment percentage-wise of pre-orders to launch sales. I think that's one of the reasons why you also a lot of times see shortages on Nintendo first-party games right when they came out. Nintendo seems to be doing a little bit better about that, but for a while it was bad, right? A lot of times when a new first-party Nintendo game came out, it would see shortages very, very rapidly. And part of that is because demand is so much bigger at launch than pre-orders with Nintendo, particularly because they reach such a broader demographic of people that aren't traditionally pre-ordering, right? Nintendo does well with your hardcores, but they also do very well with a more casual consumer who's not going in there to a GameStop or something like that to put a pre-order in. So, they're looking good, but I'm not going to say, I know for a fact everything there with pre-orders. In terms of your second question, do I think it's going to impact the female demographic, women, younger girls? Absolutely. So Animal Crossing does well, across the board, right? Don't get this mistaken. I think sometimes people go out there with negative intentions and try and be like, oh, Animal Crossing, it only appeals to girls. Guys don't like that. Men don't play Animal Crossing. That's completely false. So it does very, very well with guys as well. But it does have a very strong link to that female demographic. So I do expect a lot more women and a lot more girls to be going out there and probably seeing a big boost in Switch hardware as well. And also, like, in terms of your percentage split for who buys that game, I'd love to see Nintendo release some of that because demographically speaking, yes, it does a very good job of hitting that. So I expect Animal Crossing to be utterly massive. Utterly massive. New Leaf did over 12 million. I can't remember if we got another update past that, but I know it did at least 12 million. And so New Horizons is just going to be absolutely gigantic. Look at how Switch software for like basically every single franchise is just shattering Nintendo records, right? I mean, look at Pokemon. Look at what that did. So New Horizons, I mean, that's going to be enormous, and I think Nintendo's actually underestimating it in their projections for the quarter. So if you notice that they're kind of expecting Q1 of this year to be down, I think they're projecting 29% decline year over year, if I remember right. That's crazy, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to decline that much. Maybe it's flat, maybe could even be up, but the idea that it's going to decline almost 30% in the first quarter of the year, I can almost guarantee you straight up right now, there's no chance that happens with Animal Crossing. All right. Dear Ace, what do you think? Why is Nintendo shy to drive their mobile business higher with more releases? This is a great question, and this is the one thing that is kind of disappointing in Nintendo's financials, to be honest with you, is their mobile performance. I know that they just got a big headline where it was saying how they've already crossed, I think it was $1 billion in revenue for their mobile titles. To be honest, that's not that great of a result, actually, whenever you factor in, they've been doing this for a few years now with mobile games, and a lot of that is coming from the Fire Emblem mobile title, like a lot of that revenue. So the other games aren't really doing super well in terms of revenue. So that's a good question, Darius. Nintendo still has work to do in terms of the mobile front. If they really want that to be a core pillar of the company, whenever they first announced they were doing it, bringing games to mobile, they talked about that, how mobile was going to become this big core, not the focus of their business, right? The Switch, the console market is still obviously Nintendo's focus, but mobile, is something that they really want to take advantage of. And yeah, they still have work to do there. Out of all of their incredible financial results, that's the one thing you can look at and be like, mobile could have been better. Mobile could have been better. All right, Death Star 100. Man, those Pokemon sales, they're absurd. I mean, whenever I saw that number, I talked about this at the beginning of the video, I almost couldn't believe what I was reading. Like, it was that big. It's over 16 million in a month and a half. I mean, whenever you look at where we're at right now, so whenever that reporting comes out, that doesn't cover, the last couple of weeks of sales. It was like just behind Sun and Moon and X and Y, like right behind them. Those have already been passed. Like it's already past those now. Whenever you factor in where we're at right now, Sun and Moon and X and Y have already fallen. So, I mean, there is a very, very strong chance, I tweeted about this, that Sword and Shield end up becoming the second best selling Pokemon games ever. It's entirely possible. I can't tell you that for sure yet until we see legs, but just based off of this launch, I mean, after its first quarter, it's already tracking to be one of the best selling already lifetime. It's already passed up Black and White's lifetime totals in one quarter. I mean, that is crazy. So there's a chance that this ends up being the second best-selling Pokemon game besides Red and Blue. It's astounding, the performance it had. Crazy. I was thinking definitely over 10. I thought there's a very, very good chance it's over 12. Could even be hitting like that 13 million range. I was thinking like that would be amazing. To do 16 million, my God. I mean, that is crazy. It's literally crazy. Wound Up Penguin. Game Pass subscribers double from what, though? That doesn't mean a lot without the starting figure. So I can't go too into this, but I actually do know a little bit about that. I don't know the exact number because Microsoft keeps that very well hidden, but I can say, as Phil Spencer has hinted at and kind of commented on, it was already at millions. So we're looking at multiple millions of subscribers. That it's a big number. I can't give any more than that, and I don't know the exact number. In fact, hardly anyone does. Microsoft keeps that very close to the chest, but we are talking Game Pass subs are at millions. So Microsoft's financials were disappointing. This is a hard one to say. I shouldn't necessarily say disappointing so much as I should say underwhelming, because I think it's kind of expected. The generation is, nearly dead. Whenever you look at December sales, actually Xbox did pretty decent in December. PlayStation sales in December were kind of terrible, actually. November was kind of the reverse. PlayStation did really, really well in November, comparatively, still down, but it did good in November. The gen's just dying. Even games like Call of Duty can't really lift. Like, Modern Warfare was huge this year, and it's barely, even a game like that can barely make an impact on the hardware. So I don't want to say Xbox had a bad quarter. I just would say it's underwhelming. We expect sales to be really, really down right now, and they are. So it wasn't like a surprise. Wow, this is great. They did a lot better than we thought. I would label it as underwhelming. But the one bright spot was Game Pass. Game Pass sales doubling is big, especially because it was already a big number. So, yeah, I would say it's doing really well on that front. Hardware is yikes. It was down 43% in revenue, if I recall correct. That is a yikes. That's a yikes. Damdon. Hey, Benji, I wonder the sales potential of Sword and Shield, and can it get near Pokemon Red and Blue? So I just talked about this. I think that has a strong chance of becoming the second best-selling Pokemon ever. If it can match Red and Blue, I'm not going to go down that route yet. We're way too early. Its launch quarter is absurd. Absurd. But let's see how legs are. Maybe a year from now, I can sit here and tell you, yeah, it's going to do it. It's going to get close to Red and Blue, but we just don't know. Launch quarter is crazy. One of the craziest things I've ever seen, but we still have a long way to go before we know about legs. I'll say that the expansion pass and not releasing another version of the game, right, helps it to get even closer to Red and Blue, because it's not going to have its legs cut short by like an ultra version, like how we saw with Ultra Sun and Moon or something like that. So I think that helps it get closer. But it's too early to say in terms of where it's going to land in terms of Red and Blue. But the thing I'd say is there's a good chance it could end up the second best-selling Pokemon. Zdark here. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did indeed have some big bundling in Europe in December and in November in the US. That could indeed explain the big gain. Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. Thanks for the answer. For sure, Zdark. I think that's probably a factor for sure, because if you look at the individual sales, like for example, in the US rankings, Mario Kart was below even over the holidays games like, Luigi's Mansion and things like that. So I think the bundling helped it, but it's still doing really well in standalone sales as well. All right, Brooby. I fear the virus will have a bigger impact than we know so far. You're talking about in China. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, right? So that's having an impact in general. So, Nintendo just came out and talked about this, and they said that they believe it's having an impact on the Switch sales in China. We saw Overwatch League just recently cancel. I think it's like the first couple months of the Chinese homesteads that they were going to do. So for those of you that don't know, Overwatch League this year is now traveling to different countries for the first time ever. Before, it was just all housed in LA. Now they're going to be traveling to different countries for the events. And the virus actually has caused them to not go there anymore, right? So that's crazy. It's definitely having an impact on the market for sure. Hi, Benji, longtime fan. What's up, Krogan? Thank you so much. When do you think Nintendo ups their Nintendo Switch Online price? Good question. I'm thinking at some point it bumps up to $30 annually, with perhaps N64 Classics as a sweetener. So I would agree with you, Krogan, that I think they're going to have to do something else first before they bump the price. They're going to have to incorporate an achievement system, something. I think, Nintendo has come a long way in their online offerings, but they're still not at the level in terms of strictly online. I'm talking, I'm not telling you about their games or whatever, but in terms of online, they're still quite a ways behind what PlayStation and Xbox are doing in that space. So I think it being cheaper right now, it being cheaper to subscribe to Nintendo Online makes sense, because charging what Xbox and PlayStation do for what you get for the online service just wouldn't make sense. So yeah, they would need to add something, I think, to make it worth the price bump. Like you said, N64 Classics, or maybe introducing an achievement system or something like that. They're going to need to make some strides on their online before they up the price. But I do think it will happen. If you look at their digital revenue, for example, per quarter, it has gone up significantly since they introduced online. So it is having its effect. It is doing what they want it to do in terms of raising, just the overall revenue. And, make no mistake, that digital revenue especially is especially profitable. So, I'm sure it will go up, but they're going to make some improvements first for it to be worth it. Casey, let me grab a drink of coffee really quick. All right. Casey, Nintendo has put most of its big franchises on Switch already, with Animal Crossing on the way as the last big franchise to debut on the Switch. Which software do you think will push hardware after Animal Crossing? Ooh, good question. I'm interested to see what Metroid's going to do. Now, I'm not expecting Metroid to be anywhere close to an Animal Crossing or a Pokemon or a Zelda, but I am interested to see what Metroid is going to do, right? So traditionally, that's not like a mega franchise for Nintendo, but we are seeing their franchises on the Switch exploding in popularity, like across the board. So I'm interested, especially if Metroid goes for like a lot more of a core-oriented, I'm kind of expecting that. If you look at the previous Prime games, they're definitely core focused games. So if it has like a really cool online component, there's not a ton of big shooters on the Switch. If it has like a very cool, very good online multiplayer component as well, I think that could potentially be big. Breath of the Wild 2 is obviously going to be big, but I get what you're saying. A lot of their major franchises, we've had 3D Mario now, we've had Pokemon now, we've had Mario Party now, yada yada yada, Zelda. We've had a lot of their major franchises now. So I would say the game that could be the biggest surprise, if you will, could be Metroid Prime. Could be, not for sure. We need to see that game first, but I think it could be bigger than some people think. Elias, all the top games that Switch has in the list of best sales, all are exclusive. Let's be clear, people buy Switch because they're exclusives. This is almost the same with PlayStation. Interesting. 2, they identify themselves with exclusive content. This is why Microsoft officially saying that they are not going to have any exclusives, only Series X and PC in 1 or 2 years was a mistake. 3, do you think next-gen exclusives will matter a lot? Switch and PlayStation are proving that this gen. Will it continue? So a couple points there. Let's address pretty much all of them. So yes, you are correct in that that Switch especially, it's about Nintendo first party, right? Don't get me wrong. Third parties are actually doing good on Switch lately. Actually, they're doing pretty good. I just tweeted recently that Bethesda and id seem to imply that Doom outperformed their expectations. They were talking about how they were surprised at how strong of a following it's gotten. Mortal Kombat 11 did well. There's reports that The Witcher is doing well. Overwatch, I can tell you, actually did better than I think some people realize. I don't know actually how the player base is on that, like how alive it is. I don't own the game on Switch, so I couldn't tell you like how many people are actually playing online, but it did pretty well as well. So third parties are definitely finding their place on the Switch, especially indies. But yes, at the end of the day, it is about the big first party Nintendo games. That is the most important thing. With PlayStation, I'm a little bit different than you on your opinion that it's exclusives that drive PlayStation sales. I know a lot of PlayStation fans like to think that, but not really. Third party is still actually the main reason. It really is. I'm just being honest. Exclusives are big. Big PlayStation exclusives move hardware. No question about that. But if you're asking, like, if someone's saying, what is moving more PS4s, it's Grand Theft Auto, it's Call of Duty, it's Madden. And people say, well, they could get that on Xbox as well. Well, here's the thing. PlayStation is the market leader. It's the market leader. So people, whenever they're buying Call of Duty to play with their friends, they're buying a PlayStation to play with them. When they're buying to play Fortnite, they're buying a PlayStation to play Fortnite with their friends. Third party is still the dominating force on PlayStation and Xbox. It's just the facts. But I do agree with you that exclusives help separate PlayStation from Xbox. So for those people that are on the fence, that maybe aren't someone that's just going to go buy Madden, not just going to go play Fortnite, they're looking for, what am I really going to get the most, out of this console for me? I do think exclusives definitely have an impact. There's no doubt about it. So for sure, they are important. In terms of, is it a mistake for Microsoft to talk about Xbox not having any exclusives to just Series X for the first couple of years, right? They're going to be cross-gen, pretty much all their games. The other thing I would comment on in terms of that is, it looks like that is the direction that almost the entire industry is going. So, I tweeted about this recently. There was just a big GDC survey on they surveyed thousands of developers and asked them what they were working on, and it was single-digit percentages, the amount that are making a next-gen exclusive game. I think it was like 5%. Most games are gonna be cross-gen for the next year or two. So I personally, if you're asking me personally, I wish Microsoft was focusing more on just some next-gen exclusive content, that they weren't going to make so many games cross-gen. I wish we had one or two really big Series X only games that took full advantage of the hardware. Personally, that is what I wish. In terms of, like, does it hurt them? I don't think too much, because I think that's the way the whole industry is going. Sony's going to have some PS5 exclusives right at launch, which is good for them for sure. But it's not going to stick out super bad whenever, Assassin's Creed is going to be cross-gen. Call of Duty is going to be cross-gen. 90% of the games you're going to see over the next year to 2 years are going to be cross-gen. So I don't think it's the end of the world, but I get where you're coming from. All right, wound up. So that Pokemon boycott went well. I think a lot of people complaining bought it anyways. Definitely. So I tweeted about this earlier, and I was like, yeah, the boycott didn't work very well. That's not to say that people's complaints aren't valid, or that you're not, that you can't go out there and let Game Freak know how you feel, or Nintendo how you feel about the game. Not at all. I don't want to ever tell people, don't let your voice be heard. My only thing whenever I was tweeting that was, I think sometimes people focus too much on internet noise, if you will. And I'm not saying all the complaining's noise, but a narrative gets formed in online bubbles, even big ones like Twitter, to where people think that this is actually the way the market responds. And it's just not true, right? So you got to look at data. You got to look at overall industry trends. And it was always obvious Pokemon was still going to do amazing. Maybe not this amazing, but the idea that was kind of floating around that the boycott was real, and Nintendo was going to be super hurt by this. It's just not. It's not a thing. So always be careful. I even have to be careful about this as well, because I read forums, I read Twitter. Be careful about mistaking internet narratives for being true of the overall market. That's all I would say. Make sure you're careful about that. Sometimes there is a correlation. A prime example is Battlefront 2. When that game came out, the internet was very angry about the way that EA was handling the microtransactions in that game, and that did have a real world effect. So it's not always. I'm not sitting here telling you, oh, it's always a vocal minority or anything like that. There is correlation sometimes, but not always. You gotta kind of parse the you got to parse the data a little bit more. All right. Fintendo, thank you very much for the detailed answer. For sure, of course. Looking forward to the releases. Awesome. Puzzle Guy, do you think Nintendo is thinking about adding DLC to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to extend the life of the game? Or do you think with sales like this, they're just leaving it and watching it sell? My guess would be no DLC for it. I would guess they're probably working on the next Mario Kart right now, probably early in development. But I'm going to guess no DLC, because it doesn't show any signs of needing it. It's already over 20 million. I think it's over 22 million, actually, if I recall correct. So I'm not expecting DLC for it. I would guess instead you're going to get a new Mario Kart. Couple years away, though, I think. I don't think the next Mario Kart's going to be a 2020 game, maybe like a 2021. But I think that's the direction they're headed instead of DLC. Probably some like new game mechanics, a new twist. Remember like how we had Double Dash or whatever it was called at one point. I expect the next Mario Kart to have some big gameplay change-ups. All right. Elias again. Benji, do you think in February will be the PS5 reveal, or do you think Sony will be silent all February and do the event like 2 or 3 months? So if you would have asked me this question at the beginning of January, I would have been like, of course we're going to get a February PlayStation reveal. Of course, holidays are over. It worked perfectly for the PS4. They're not going to want to stay silent for that long. I would have been all in on it. And now it's looking like it ain't going to happen, which is surprising to me. That's not insider info. I have literally no idea what Sony's plans are around revealing it. It's just I don't know. They're still so quiet. Sony has been, everyone knows this. They've been so quiet for so long. It's so strange how they're handling this. I'm so excited for the reveal. Like, I cannot even tell you how hyped I am for it, but man, I'm starting to lean towards it's not going to happen in February now. Now I'm starting to think it. Here's the weird thing, right? They've got to talk about it before March, don't they? Because if they don't, like, it is 100% that the specs are going to leak at GDC. Right now, there's a lot of noise. Right now, there's a lot of rumors. I mean, literally every day it's something different. One day it's 9 teraflop PS4. Next day, 13 teraflop PS4. Day after that, 10 teraflop PS5. It's literally just all over the place. We will know like in March or April what its specs are, whether Sony talks about it or not, because it's going to be at GDC and there's going to be thousands of developers there, and Sony's going to be briefing thousands of developers about the PlayStation 5, and that info is going to leak. Like, it's going to get out. So I would think that they're going to say something before March, but who knows, man? Who knows? It's weird how they're doing this. The Platform Live, how we doing? How are you? Good to see you. Isma, what's most mind-blowing with Switch software is that usually record launches are achieved late in the console lifecycle. Very good point. Very good point. Isma, if they're already doing these numbers now, I wonder how far they will do in 2020 and beyond. That's an excellent point, Isma, is the fact that Nintendo is having such enormous performances for their first-party titles on not even a crazy huge install base yet. Don't get me wrong, 52 million is dang impressive, especially in 3 years. But it's not like the PlayStation 4's 100 million, right? They have a massive install base to launch games on. Nintendo's at half of that, and they're having some absurd performances. So that is a great point. Yeah, I mean, things could only get crazier from here, right? Because that's going to keep shooting up. 100 million is basically in the bag now for Switch. Anyone who was doubting it would hit 100 million, for it not to reach that at this point would have to have one of the biggest drops in the entire history of video game sales. Like, it would have to collapse off of a cliff to not hit 100 million. So I think you can now safely lock in Switch will be a 100 million selling platform. Ruger. Hey, Benji, with a game like Astral Chain, since it's published by Nintendo and most copies sold for $50 to $60, is it accurate to say Nintendo gets somewhere around 40 to 45 on most physical copies sold? Well, they're the publisher as well, which helps. It helps that they're published because there's no publisher split. Around there, I'd say like around $40 sounds about right for Nintendo. The retailer takes a cut, of course. There's also the cost of manufacturing the disc or the cartridge and things like this. Them being the publisher of the game helps them get more money from that. So there's no publisher fee or platform holder fee, right? Because also whenever you sell a game, anything, like let's say you sell Call of Duty on Xbox, Xbox gets a cut of that, even though they're not publishing it, even though they're not developing it. The fact that it's on their platform means that they get a cut of it. So the fact that Nintendo, is the platform holder, they're the publisher. Yeah, 40 to 45 is about right. Somewhere right around there should be the cut that they're getting out of that. And keep in mind, with digital, it's even higher, right? So anything sold on the eShop is going to be even more money for them, even higher split because there's no retailer cut. So $1 million to talk about that, $1 million for Astral Chain I think is great because that game's not a huge budget game, and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 also did over $1 million, and I think that's a good result too. I've seen some people wondering, they're like, is that good? Is that bad? I think it's solid because Marvel also didn't feel like it had a huge budget. I enjoyed that game, but when you played it, it didn't feel like a game that cost $50 million to make. So I think $1 million for Astral Chain and $1 million for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 are both strong results. Bico Sierra, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I am so happy that Astral Chain crossed $1 million. Wow, we were just talking about this. I loved that game and thought it would appeal to more people, but after its initial sales, I thought it flopped. I'm so happy it did well eventually. So one thing with Astral Chain we've seen is an extremely strong digital split, especially in Japan. A lot of people have been mistaking how well games are doing in Japan for Nintendo consoles because the digital vouchers have become such a massive thing there. Like, it's crazy, the digital splits. I think I saw that Astral Chain was something like 60% digital in Japan or something like that. I could be mistaken on that, but I think that's what I saw. It was like 60%. That's crazy for a Nintendo game. So yeah, even Nintendo now, you got to start paying attention to those digital splits. Like, that's the way the industry's moving. It's rare now. I remember early in this gen when people were like 30% sounds crazy for a game digitally, like 30%, people really going that high digital. And now it's like, dude, it's a lot higher. Now it's like 60. There's games I know of that are over 70% digital on Xbox and PlayStation. It's crazy, some of the splits. All right. Zidark, I think you may have missed this question earlier. Oh, sorry. Can you say something about the legs of Ring Fit? Oh, yeah, sure. It's out of stock in Europe and Japan, but less so in US. Yeah. Does it look to have a long tail in the US? So yeah, in the US, Ring Fit isn't exactly hard to find right now. You can go into pretty much any retailer and get it. It's not short stock, but as you noted, in Japan especially, it's wow. They cannot keep it in stock in Japan. Like, it is hitting shortages every single week, which is impressive in terms of its legs. Over 2 million, I think, is a great result for it. This is clearly not another Labo. Which I know some people were worried about whenever it was first revealed and it was coming out. Granted, it's a lot different product than Labo, but it was one of these experimental, weird kind of things from Nintendo. So you don't ever really know how that's going to go. They've had games like, the experimental stuff like Wii Fit that's just amazing in sales. And then they've had stuff like Labo, which was a complete miss, really. So I think there was some nervousness about Ring Fit, but over 2 million, I think, is a great result. And legs are good. It made the top 20 in December MPD, I believe. I think it slotted in right at number 20, if I'm remembering right. So even in the US, it's showing some legs, but it's not like super hard to find. But yeah, I expect that to continue to keep rising. Where it's going to top out at, I don't know. It's not going to be a Wii Fit. It doesn't look like it's going to go down that road. But I definitely think it could hit like a 4 or 5 million Ring Fit. I mean, I definitely really do think it can get there for sure, especially since it's already over 2 million and still showing legs. All right. My Scar, with the tariffs called off indefinitely. Oh, my goodness. Thank God, right? Do you think that there will be any changes to hardware in terms of Microsoft and Sony designing with the expectations of tariffs, i.e. price and performance? Well, it's too late now. In terms of that, my Scar, it's too late to change. At least what we have like right now. So what's in these boxes right now, we're within the same year. You're not really going to get major changes. There's things they can do. There's clock speeds they can adjust, things like that. There are definitely pieces they can do to make these systems a little bit different. But in terms of like, hey, tariffs are off, now we can put like a whole new GPU in this thing. You can't do that. It's just too late in the design process. These things are already, contracts are already signed, completely signed. We're going to be ramping up to actually building the retail units in just a few months. That usually starts around summertime, whenever they very first start actually producing the boxes that are going to be on store shelves. So we're in the final stretch here. There's still some tweaks that can be done. There's still some clock speeds that can be adjusted up or down. There's still some tweaks you can do. But in general, we are at the final hardware for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. We're basically there. Benji, hi Benji, what's up? Do you expect Nintendo to make moves with third-party dev acquisitions? Interesting. We know Sony are, we know Microsoft are. Nintendo, there's been like no rumblings of acquisitions, of purchases. If I had to guess, Benji, I would say probably no. I don't really see them buying a third party. What I do expect, though, is them to continue to increase the size of their own internal studios. So, ones they already have, I expect to see that probably keep ramping up in terms of how many employees they have, and also possibly building a new first-party studio, something like that. They could make some third-party acquisitions because they have had some strong partnerships with a few, especially Japanese ones, that have helped them create some of these first-party games. So it could happen. I would just say, if so, it's probably going to be one of these smaller Japanese studios. I don't see Nintendo going out and like what Sony did with Insomniac, when they bought Insomniac, or like when Microsoft bought Obsidian. I wouldn't expect one of those like crazy headline ones. If they do buy someone, it's probably going to be one of these smaller Japanese studios. Ruger, the question might be a bit early, but could you compare the pre-order data of Death Stranding with Final Fantasy VII Remake? I know you said Death Stranding had really strong pre-orders in week 1 sales. Yeah, that was the bummer for Death Stranding. Death Stranding did really well like those first 48 hours, and then it was extremely front-loaded. I mean, fell off basically every single chart instantly. It was crazy. It was crazy how front-loaded Death Stranding was. In its second month, it didn't even make top 20 in the US. It just disappeared in its second month. Which is only its second month. That's not great. In like places like the UK and other European markets, you saw the same thing. It just gone. Japan gone. Had a good launch in Japan for its first week. Wasn't like insane, but a good launch. Had a good first week in the US, but then disappeared. In terms of how it's comparing to Final Fantasy VII Remake, man, I actually haven't gone in and made that direct comparison. So I'd have to look at that, actually. Off the top of my head, I think it's probably actually somewhat comparable right now. But that's not like a definitive answer because I actually haven't even drawn that comparison. So I'd have to go in and look at it. Benji, all major Nintendo franchises were released on the Switch, Metroid soon. We know Zelda is on the way, but are you expecting a new Mario Kart 3D Mario Smash this gen? Okay, yeah. Talked about Mario Kart. I do think you're going to get a new one this gen because we haven't had like a new Mario Kart. The one that's out is a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's one that came out on the Wii U. So I do think you're going to get a new Mario Kart probably in 2021. I don't expect that at all this year. 3D Mario, yes. I'm very confident you're going to get another 3D Mario this gen. Smash, I don't think so. I think Nintendo is going to plan on just supporting Smash Ultimate for the rest of this gen. I think you will get another Smash eventually, but that'll be on Switch 2 or whatever it's called. I do not expect another Smash Brothers this gen. So Mario Kart, yes. And 3D Mario, yes, I am expecting both those. 3D Mario especially. I think that's like basically guaranteed. In fact, it's probably not even that far off. Whenever you look at when Odyssey came out, could also be a 2021 title on that as well. Because I think Zelda is the big focus this year, so probably 2021 on that. Bruby, Tomodachi Life, new 2D Mario, etc. are missing on Switch. Oh yeah, good call. Good call. We could get some of those, especially a new 2D Mario. That's a good call. Speaking of which, Mario Maker 2 legs are kind of meh, right? Do we all agree on that? 5 million. It's sold over 5 million since launch, which is a really good result. But legs have been, they're not like terrible, but Mario Maker 2 legs have not impressed me. I got to say that. Total sales, 5 million is good, especially because it had a really good launch. But that's a Nintendo game that hasn't had fantastic legs, in my opinion. Benji here. Do you get the sense that Microsoft seems poised to a great next gen? Interesting question. Phil Spencer seems so confident in the initiative, and Ninja Theory could become the Santa Monica or Naughty Dog for Microsoft. So I definitely do expect that Xbox Series X and whatever Microsoft has next gen, I do expect that to outsell Xbox One. I really do. They seem to be just in a better spot. They have more first-party studios. You're going to have more games hitting regularly. The hardware seems like it's going to be really powerful, really good. If I had to make a guess, I still think PlayStation is going to be, in terms of between PlayStation and Xbox, I still think they are going to take the global market. I do expect PlayStation to still outsell them, and probably pretty handily. I think PS5, without knowing really much, I'm guessing it's probably another 100 million plus selling console. Especially markets like Japan and mainland Europe and places like this. The PlayStation brand is just so much more powerful. But I do expect Xbox to have a much better next gen than they had this gen. I think there's a very real chance that Microsoft could actually outsell PlayStation in the US. Not a guarantee, but a lot of people actually don't realize how relatively close Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are in the US. Like, it's not a huge gap, especially compared to the rest of the world, right? The rest of the world, Sony is way over 2 times the install base of Xbox. That's not the case in the US. It's much closer. And that's with all of Microsoft's mistakes that they made this gen. So I'm not saying they're going to outsell them in the US next gen, but it's a possibility. So I do expect a better performance. Ruger, what time is it? 45 minutes? We'll go for like another 10 or so, and then we'll call it a chat. Thanks everyone who's been joining in. I really appreciate it. Ruger, Nintendo software is selling so well on Switch that it seems 90% of their franchise's best-selling entries will be on Switch. Is this unprecedented? I mean, I think so, right? I'd have to go back and look, like in terms of PlayStation comparing historically to like what their franchises are doing on PlayStation 4. The thing is, though, is PlayStation, a lot of their franchises from like the PS2 and PS3 days haven't been on the PlayStation 4. So, some of them have, but some of them haven't. So it's harder to draw a direct comparison with like PlayStation. With Xbox, we know, their flagship franchises like Gears of War and Halo have not sold as well this gen as they did in previous gens. So for like one platform to straight up dominate, I mean, probably, right? I think it is unprecedented. Almost every single first-party franchises Nintendo releases on Switch is shattering that franchise's record. I don't think there's been a piece of hardware that's ever done that before. I really don't think so. Benji, great to see the chat again. I agree. I love it. I love doing these. Wound up, I wish Nintendo had bought Alpha Dream. Who knows what the fate of the Mario and Luigi series is now? Yeah, that seems like it's game over, right? Especially with how poorly the last one did. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Mario and Luigi continues. Benji, are you surprised by the sudden drop in sales for the PS4 and Xbox One this year? I know a new gen is coming, but it's 1 year away. Aren't those drastic drops around the next gen launch? I will say this year was not good for either one. That's one thing. I made a tweet, which may be somewhat controversial depending on your stance. I made a tweet that was saying, for the console warriors to not do too much celebrating whenever they saw the Xbox hardware sales declines this quarter, because PlayStation's also going to have some big declines. I wasn't sitting here saying like, oh, Xbox is doing better than you think. It wasn't one of those kind of things. It was more like I wouldn't go around celebrating the decline of one when PlayStation's right about to announce the same thing. When you look at December in the US, it was bad for PlayStation. There's no other way to phrase it. It was a bad month. Like, it just did not do well. Yeah, and it declined most of the year, like actually the entire year it declined. So, which is to be expected. I don't think like the declines were shocking. But they're big. They're definitely big. And here's the thing. 2020 is going to be horrible for PlayStation and Xbox sales. Like, horrible. It's going to be really bad. I think a lot of people don't realize that yet. Sony can somewhat ride it more than Microsoft because they still have that $199 in the bag if they want to cash that in, that price drop. And that will help for a month or two. But it's not going to help long term. And here's the other thing is that, I see people saying like, oh, Final Fantasy VII Remake's coming. The Last of Us is coming. Don't expect massive hardware spikes for those. Just don't. I mean, Call of Duty can't do it. I mean, the biggest games this year can't do it. It's just the end of a gen. PlayStation, I still think is going to have a better year than Xbox for sure. But neither one's in a great spot in terms of hardware right now. in general, PlayStation had a phenomenal generation. I expect when Sony's reporting comes out, for example, things like PlayStation Network sales are going to be amazing, very profitable. So I'm not sitting here trying to tell you, oh, Sony's doomed, Xbox is doomed. But in terms of hardware specifically, it is crystal clear this gen's at the end. It's dying, and it's dying hard now. All right. Isma, how is Pokemon Sword Shield lagging so far in the US? Great. From everything I have seen data-wise, lagging great. So I would expect an also huge next quarter for it. Expect a very, very, very good result. Zedark, I think Super Mario Maker 2 simply isn't comparable to a handmade 2D platform experience, and the market wants the latter more. I think Super Mario Maker 2 should end up at or close to 10 million in the end, though. Yeah, and I think the fact that a lot of people probably don't realize that Mario Maker 2 has a lot of single-player content, pre-built levels as well. I think there's some people that super casuals that might think that it's just like a building game, and they don't realize they can sit there and never build a level and still get a ton of play out of it. So I agree with you. It's harder to compare it to a traditional 2D Mario, but I still think the legs are kind of meh. They're tracking comparatively to Splatoon 2, and that game is headed towards lifetime sales of well over 10 million. Yeah, I get your point, Zedark. I definitely get it. Domdon, Mario Kart 8 regular and deluxe together is getting to Mario Kart Wii sales. Yeah, Mario Kart 8 is insane. It's insane. Exile End. Good news that 2 new Kingdoms teams, no more confirmed new Kingdom Hearts. I think one game will be revealed at E3 or TGS, to be honest. I think we might be a little early for the next Kingdom Hearts to get revealed, but definitely more on the way. And I tweeted about this. It makes sense whenever you look at how well Kingdom Hearts 3 did. I feel like the discussion of Kingdom Hearts 3 kind of fell off quickly, but it still was in the top 10 best-selling games of the entire year last year in the U.S. So, I mean, it was still a massive success. So it only makes sense for more Kingdom Hearts games to be made. Zedark, we just got a couple questions left, so I'll answer these and we'll end the chat. Zedark, to add to the unprecedented software point, DS had the most 10 million plus sellers with 10 games. Switch already has 6 with 2 more less than 1 million away. It should have by far the most 10 million sellers. Impressive. Great data point there, Zedark. I actually didn't know that. So that's a very, very, very great data point, and that is extremely impressive. The software sales were insane. Like, Switch is selling software like almost no console I've ever seen in terms of like first party. I've almost never seen anything like it. Benji, is Sony doing enough to recapture the US and Japanese markets where the PS4 did respectively good and okay? The PS4 did like 30 million in the US, and that's pretty low compared to the 360, PS2, and Wii. So that's kind of what I was commenting on whenever I was saying I think a lot of people don't realize that in the US, Xbox One and PS4 are very competitive. Most gens traditionally, the platform leader in like the US market has like a huge advantage. Like there's a gap. It's a really big gap. If you look at the PS2 to the Xbox and the GameCube, whenever you look at, there was a bit of a change up with the Wii and 360, but again, both of those significantly outsold the PS3. What you're seeing this time around is PlayStation 4 definitely in the lead in the US, but Xbox being a very competitive, second place platform with them. Switch is obviously bigger now, but Switch wasn't on the market at first. You kind of get what I'm getting at here. So I just think Sony is, they had a huge shakeup recently in terms of their leadership, the way the entire company works. I think that's having a major impact on how quiet they've been. I expect Sony's going to be coming out guns blazing on PlayStation 5 soon. I know people are getting frustrated. I know people are asking what's the deal, what's going on. I think guns are going to be blazing here soon. Pedro, amazing results from Nintendo. Do you think this could delay a potential enhanced Switch version? Also curious how the Lite hit the 5 million so soon. Yeah, Lite did good. Light did, I think, better than some thought and maybe less good than others thought. It's kind of a wash because Switch in general is absurd. In terms of the enhanced Switch, I don't know. Rumors about this have been floating around forever. In fact, I first started talking about hearing about rumors about it like when was that? Early last year, which didn't end up coming to fruition. So these new rumors about another revision, I'm not even commenting on them anymore because these rumors have been going on for so long, just floating around. Oh, there's a new revision. There's a pro. There's a pro. There's a pro. We've basically been hearing this now for well over a year that there's going to be one. Who knows? I honestly have no idea if there's going to be a revision this year or not on it. Pedro, regarding Astral Chain 1 million sales, I hope this ends up giving us new action IPs from Nintendo partners. Well, I would say it's definitely encouraging to see more Platinum and Nintendo partnerships in the future. I think 1 million for that's a really good result because it's a niche action game. I think 1 million's solid. So I'd expect, we already know Bayonetta's on the way, but I would expect that relationship to continue. Arm Gunner, hi Benji, just one question. Do you know why Sony and Nintendo didn't report download-only software titles in their quarterly earnings? Whether it is The Forest or MW, it's still a game sold. I actually don't know why they do that. I have no idea. I honestly don't know. I can't answer it because I don't know. I don't want to sit here and come with some bullcrap answer. I'm not sure why the reporting on that's the way it is. Benji, an MMA question. Ooh, I like this. Something a little different. I love MMA. An MMA question. Who should McGregor fight next? Ooh, Khabib, GSP, or Masvidal? Thank you for the fun question. This is fun. Something a little different. So we've got this and one more question, then we'll call it a chat. Who should McGregor fight next? I would be most entertained if I saw McGregor fight Masvidal next. I just think that fight would be so much fun. And I would have thought, honestly, before seeing McGregor this time at 170, I would have thought Masvidal was too big and just too powerful. McGregor is extremely talented, but I just thought the size difference there might be too much. And we weren't sure how McGregor's power transitioned up to 170, right? We knew we had big power at 145. We knew we had big power at 155, but we didn't know at 170 really how it carried over. He fought Nate up there twice, and Nate's a hard one to judge for that because he has such a granite chin. But I think that this last fight with Cowboy, granted we didn't see enough, but I think we got a good sense that his power transitions up there. So in terms of entertainment, I'd love to see Conor fight Masvidal. In terms of what we'll actually see, my guess is either Khabib. I don't think Khabib, actually, because I think the timing's just not right. I think Justin Gaethje. That would be my bet. I think you're going to see a Justin Gaethje fight. All right, last question I'm going to answer here. E. Obama. How high do you expect the Xbox Game Pass user numbers to be? Total guess here, 5 million or more subs would be my guess. Probably at least 5 million subscribers. Just as a guess, but probably in there at 4 to 5 million at least. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining the live chat. I appreciate it like always. We'll do another one of these next week because we're going to have Sony earnings on the way. We're going to have multiple more earnings on the way to talk about. So there's going to be some exciting news to talk about. So we'll get another live chat in next week. Thanks for joining the chat, everyone. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Helps the channel out a bunch. I'm not like a major YouTuber. I'm not constantly pumping out videos nonstop, but I do like to see the channel grow and thrive. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for the fantastic questions. Thanks for being here. And I will see you all on Twitter or on YouTube next week. Thanks a lot, everyone. Play some games. Have some fun.